Welcome to The Details with Adam Thrower and Cecil Walker. This is a podcast where we examine the intersection between solution-focused brief therapy and current topics happening in the world. And we do this because we genuinely want the world to be a better place. So enjoy and come and examine the details with us. So, Cecil, today we're going to talk a little bit about the importance or value of looking at times where we have previously been successful or times where in the past we have accomplished something meaningful, and why it might be useful to revisit those moments of success or to try to achieve that level of success again. And so I'm wondering if I start out with just a big general question. Why do you think it might be useful to look back at times when we've been successful and either remember those things or try to accomplish them again?
Well, I think at this point, I've seen a lot of different clients in lots of different populations, all in lots of different scenarios. And what seems to generally be true for nearly everyone is not that they come to therapy being totally devoid of any ability to do anything with the difficult situation that they're in. It's not that they're lacking any agency or lacking any resources or even just innate ability to do something about the situation that they're in or to change somehow their experience of the situation that they're in. That has almost never happened as far as I can see. What tends to happen through our conversation, though, is that they can recall the things that they do have that can have an effect on the situation that they're in. They can remember, oh yeah, I dealt with something similar before actually, or when stuff gets hard, here's what I've done in other times. Or maybe because it's so hard, I just kind of forgot or lost track of, here's the things that I am actually good at, or here's the strengths that I normally would be using on a regular basis, but I just got knocked off balance by whatever's going on right now in my life. And so if that's what happens so frequently for most people, is that they just need to remember what is it in your past or in you or in your relationships or in all the things that you have going on that kind of allows you to get through hard things or to deal with situations as they come up. If all they need to do is to remember, then I think it's very much worth to go back and say, well, what's happened and what have you been through? What have you accomplished in tough times or really, really good times? What stood out to you that says, oh, here's what we're capable of, apparently?
Yeah, it's interesting because as you were talking, I had a couple of thoughts come to my mind, and one thought I've never really had before. But you used the word remember a couple of times. And as you were talking, I was thinking to myself, that's kind of an interesting word because the root of that word is member, right? And so how do you remember something? And in some sense, I think that does shed some light on this idea, right? That I used to have qualities or I was using characteristics or traits or skills in a particular way. And in some sense, they became like dismembered from me. I'm not using those things anymore. They're not a part of me, or I'm maybe not completely devoid of them, but they're not a member of who I am to the fullest capacity. And so in some sense, this process of remembering is gathering up those things and starting to use them again and starting. So it's not just that I think about them or I fondly look back in time. But in some sense, I think this remembering of achievements is really more of like retaking them on, making them a part of who you are again. And I hadn't ever really thought about it like that before, but I think making them a member again, maybe that's a useful way to be thinking about this process.
Yeah, I really like that. I like that zooming in on remembering and what that means for how they kind of have to see themselves stepping into that again, I guess, regaining the contact that they had with who they were in being able to do that thing before. And the way that you were kind of pulling apart, remembering makes me think of kind of anecdotally, the French word for to remember is souvenir. We think of souvenirs as, here's a thing I take from a place that I've been, a relatively impressive place usually, and it's a thing that helps me remember where I've been. And so kind of in the same sense, people can take souvenirs from the experiences that they've had. And they can say, look, this shows that I'm a person who has been to this place, who has done this thing, who has accomplished whatever this thing is. Here's a symbol of I am that person. And so to remember that means to acknowledge, oh yeah, that's part of me. That's something I contact with.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that to think about it as a souvenir, right? In some sense, we think about it often as a tangible thing, and trying to make those successes tangible again in our lives. I think that's really useful. So it begs the question a bit of, if we're going to go back and do this remembering experience, what are some of the keys or the steps, or how, if I want to do this, how do I go about doing it? What tips or strategies work?
A lot of things come to mind all at once. So that static you hear from my brain is me trying to organize it out. The first thing that comes to mind, I think, in thinking about this is, where are you looking? What are you looking at when you look back and say, I need to remember, I need to find a souvenir from, something that I've done, or something that speaks to who I am and what I'm capable of. And I think that very much has to be related to, as we always say, what's your hope for right now? What is it that you want? Whatever's going on in your life, what change, transformation are you searching for that would help you with the situation that you're in now? If you're someone who's just looking for peace, if you're someone who's, you've been really down and low lately and you just want to find some joy, I think you need to know what that thing is for you to be able to say, well, how do I look back at my past? Where do I look back at my past?
Yeah, I think that's important, is knowing where to look. And I think one of the things that we oftentimes say is, you can't say I desire something or I want something unless you've had a taste of it before, unless you've experienced some version of it previously. And I think that's an important component here, because if we take a moment and we say, okay, so what kind of person do I want to be, or what is it that I want to achieve? That's going to help us determine where to look back. When have I had this before? When did I taste this? When did I get the first glimpse that that's something that I wanted? So I think that is the current connected to the past is an important step, I think, in this process. Another thing that I was thinking about too in this process is looking at how did you accomplish that before? Like, again, if we use the word remember, right? When that characteristic or trait or achievement was part of the membership of who you are, how did you do it? So I think part of it is learning the lessons, or looking back and saying, what lessons were a part of that process? I think about, like Olympians, when they try to do repeat performances from one Olympic Games to the next Olympic Games, whether they had a wonderful experience at the Olympics and perhaps won a medal, or if they had a horrible experience, in essence, what they're saying is, I'm going to pursue the same achievement again. And looking back and saying, what did I do that helped me either be successful, or where were the pitfalls that I need to make sure to overcome? How do I compensate? How do I do something different than that? So looking back at the moment where the attempt was made, without judgment or shame or guilt, but in some sense saying, there are lessons there that I need to learn from, that I need to make sure that I incorporate this time around.
I really like that, because I think inherent in that idea is that, and this might not be an assumption that everybody would automatically make, but inherent in that is that there is stuff there, right? Like, there is something to be squeezed out of these moments, these occasions somewhere in your past, that you said, like you described it as, this is a lesson you can take from it. And so that idea that that's kind of just inherently there, latently underneath some of these experiences, if you just take that and say that, yes, there is, what is it? What's the thing that I could kind of get back in contact with from these periods that I've been in? It's something subtle, I think, but it is something that should be acknowledged, that you do have to take that perspective on these places that I've been to show something about what I can do or who I am. And I to assume that so that I can reach back and grab those things.
Yeah, and I think that doesn't even necessarily need to be limited to my own experience, right? I think one of the things that I don't remember where I heard this, but I was listening to something and they said, if it has been done before by any human, the lesson is that it's achievable by any human. And I think that that's something, like, the lesson may not be my own lesson from history or previous successes, but I might be inspired by someone, watching somebody else succeed. And I think having role models or having people that you look up to or admire, there can be lessons there. And if you really kind of nuance it out, how did they achieve what they achieved? That makes achieving those things replicatable in your own life.
It's amazing how powerful that is, just to be able to say it's happened already, so I know that it can happen again. And all that's changed in saying that sentence is your belief in what's possible, your belief in, there is potential somewhere in my humanness that would allow me to do this thing. To be able to get that from the inspiration you feel about seeing someone else do something, I think it's even more powerful if you've seen yourself do similar things when you look back at the past. I think that really speaks to just the way that how our beliefs and our understandings of what's possible can really, really be influenced by, are you looking in the right place for, an idea of what's possible for yourself?
Yeah, I think the other thing that comes to my mind too is recently it was announced that NASA is going to try to return to the moon, right? We landed on the moon over 50 years ago now, and really there hasn't been many attempts since that point to re-land on the moon. And so on the surface, right, somebody could question and say, like, why would they put all that money and energy and resources into this endeavor if we've conquered that before? But within the next couple of years, the plan is we're going to go do this thing that we've done before. And so I guess that begs a question a bit too of what's the value in trying to accomplish something that you've previously accomplished? Why not let the previous accomplishment be enough?
Well, I can't speak directly for NASA, but I think...
Come on.
All right, fine, I'll speak for NASA. No, I think in a general sense, from just a human angle on it, an individual angle, I think that's what therapy is all about, is about being the kind of person that you want to be. And if that kind of person does these kinds of achievements, then it only makes sense to me that you need to see yourself do those achievements. In fact, it's not even you need to see that for you to be that kind of person. It's once you are that kind of person, these are the things that you just do. You just accomplish these kinds of things as a result, as a symptom of being the kind of person that you're saying that you want to be. NASA does incredible missions all the time. I guess you could zoom in and say, why do any of these actually really, really incredible things? But the fact is they're NASA. They do incredible things. That's just who they are. So if any of us were to be able to become the NASA version of ourselves, the highest of human achievement versions of ourselves, I think we would just see ourselves doing that stuff just as a result of stepping into being that person, remembering that we can do those things.
Yeah, I think that's a really remarkable way to look at it, is like once you accomplish something, you now can identify as that kind of a person, right? So now you can say, like, I'm a NASA kind of person, or I'm a marathon kind of person, or whatever. And as you were talking, the other thing I was thinking about is now when they go to the moon, we have incredible technology that we never had before. We have the capability of communication in a way that we never had before. So even though they're trying to accomplish the exact same thing, land on the moon, what that means now is something entirely different, because the world has changed and technology has changed. And I think sometimes, again, thinking about like that version, right? NASA in and of itself has changed. Their capacity has changed. What we know has changed. What questions they now know that they could ask, or what things they possibly might look for now on the moon, is probably entirely different than what they knew or could question at that point. And so I think, too, when we try to re-accomplish something, we're showing up as a different version of ourselves. We're not the new person who's doing this, but now we're somebody who has accomplished this. So now we can achieve different things. We can learn new things. We can discover new aspects of ourselves. And so inherently, each time we try to accomplish something, we're really trying to accomplish something different. It just looks on the outside as the same task.
Would you say, and maybe I'm overinterpreting some of what you're describing, but I do think it's fascinating either way. Would you say then that no matter what people are evolving in some kind of a way. Like it's just inevitable that you are changing and transforming and progressing, so that should you revisit something, you're always going to be this newer form of yourself in engaging with that. Would you say that's just an inevitable fact of us living our lives?
Yes, but I think what's really important about that is that we should be purposeful about producing the kind of change that we want, right? I could, let's say again, I went to the Olympics and I could, for 3.5 years, not practice, not work out, not do any of the things. And so change is happening. And then 6 months before the Olympics, I decided, okay, I'm going to do this again. I have so much farther to go to accomplish the same task, versus if I go to the Olympics and every day after that, I emblazon in my mind, I'm going to accomplish this task and I'm going to do it faster, or I'm going to be stronger. That channels the change, right? Every day I'm working out. Every day I'm eating the things that I'm supposed to eat. Every day I'm studying, the craft. Though the possibility of achievement, it could be the same, right? Like I could get ready in 6 months and I could achieve that task, or I could have used the entire 4 years to achieve that task. Beyond just the accomplishment, there's something important about the journey. And I think it's how purposeful are we about the change we're trying to achieve on our way to re-accomplishing something.
Yeah. I really like that a lot. It's something that I've always tended to do ever since I was a kid. Whenever I'm not feeling well, whenever I feel like, I'm feeling lower than, I normally feel, or sicker than I normally feel or something, I always think, well, this isn't permanent. I know how I feel is going to change. But I think you're adding this really, really nuanced caveat of how is it going to change? Which direction, might things go in? And what you do and what you set your sights on, and how you align your decision-making and your behavior influences that. Is it going to change for the better, or is it going to move further along into a worse direction? Are you going to feel more capable of handling what's going on, or are you going to feel like this is just spiraling out of control? I could totally see how, yes, change is inevitable. No one is stuck exactly in the same spot, exactly as the same person, but there's so much value in being able to say, well, here's the kind of change I'm going after. Here's how I'm really going to take advantage of riding this wave of change that inevitably is coming.
Yeah, I think that's really powerful. I think just thinking about and kind of summarizing where we've been, I think it's important to remember, in essence, to think about the value of remembering, right? And being thoughtful about, what do I want to be incorporated into who I am again? So I think there's value in just being thoughtful about that task. But I think in addition to that, there's real value in thinking about, as I move toward accomplishing something or remembering something, I could also be purposeful about how change, not just the outcome, but the process.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about remembering, it's really twofold. It is deliberately manipulating the process and being thoughtful and purposeful about what outcome am I really trying to accomplish here.
I know we're probably already having a lengthy conversation for this platform, but the one thing that I do think we should absolutely touch on, maybe as quickly as we can, is what exactly that even looks like when you really reach back, grab that thing that you need, remember that thing, get that souvenir, and pull that into the situation that you're in now. When you're doing that, what does that look like? How do you even begin to do that? Yeah,
that's an important question. You're right. I think I go back to a conversation I had with somebody earlier today, actually. And we were having a conversation. I wasn't thinking about it in this context, but we were having this kind of a conversation of remembering who they were and what they wanted to reclaim. And when I asked, like, what would you like, in essence, the outcome to be, this person said, I want my confidence back. And so then I asked a question of, when you say I want it back, when did you have it at its most, right? When was confidence its highest for you? And they said it was about a year ago. And I said, well, what was happening at that point that let you know my confidence is super high? And they talked about several things. They talked about the difference in the way that they were approaching work. They talked about the difference in the way that they were interacting with their partner, with other family members, and that confidence influenced many aspects of life.
Mhm.
And so I think that's part of it, is getting that detail of when did I have what I want, and did it impact everything possible around me?
Mhm.
And I think that tiny little detailing lets us kind of revision, right? To see again, oh, that one thing really did change so many aspects of my life. It was a little bit here and it was a little bit there. And that then, kind of using that word of remembering, if I can remember how I was different, then I can start to strive for those tiny pieces, right? Instead of it being this huge goal of confidence, it becomes, I want to act toward my partner in a way that makes them respect me. So now on a day-to-day, my thoughts are, how do I treat this person so that they will respect me?
Mhm.
When you put that into context at work, it turns into, how much effort do I need to put in today so that I can walk into wherever I need to go and I can feel confident about how much work I've done. So it takes this huge thing of confidence and it makes it attainable,
Mhm.
tiny pieces of it attainable each day. And I think that's similar to those athletes, right, who are going from one Olympic Games to the next. It's about a culmination of lots of little bits of effort and accomplishment and achievement that ends up in you triumph over the situation. I think the more clear we can get on how that ultimate thing will impact the tiniest details in our lives, the more we can stack up those small successes.
Yeah, I'd never really thought about it this way, but your description of that kind of made me see how it just becomes so much more visible when you go back and look at those moments and look at those little details. It really puts it in your face how you embodied this thing, where it showed up, all the differences that it made, how significant that was, other people noticing. Just makes it so visible. The same way that someone who is already living in that in the present, someone who sees themselves doing competent things every single day, that's really visible to them too. And so tomorrow they don't have to worry about their confidence because they see it so well. And I could see how someone could get the same kind of experience from, if I really zoom in on when I had it back there, I'm going to get the same kind of contact with it. I'm going to feel like it's really, really visible to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll come back and
Maybe
keep going, because I'm sure we have lots more to say, but we should probably wrap it up there for today. So thanks for engaging in this conversation. I really appreciate it.
This podcast is sponsored by the Solution Focused Universe, a global community dedicated to the growth of professionals who want to master the solution focused approach. The SFU is home to the world's largest library of solution focused material, which is updated on a monthly basis. Join fellow community members and solution focused leaders in coaching calls and private Facebook groups to discuss anything and everything related to solution focused brief therapy.